with the expert from the School Meals Coalition in support of the Free Nutritious Meals Program. Sebelumnya, izinkan saya menyapa secara khusus kepada Bapak Febrian Alfianto Rudiat, Wakil Menteri Kementerian Perencanaan Pembangunan Nasional atau disingkat Bappenas. Lalu untuk yang kami hormati Bapak Pungkas Bahjuri Ali, Pelaksana Tugas Deputi Bidang Pembangunan Manusia dan Kebudayaan Bappenas. Lalu kepada Ibu Jennifer Rosenzweig, Representative and Country Director WFP Indonesia. Perkenalkan, saya Fandi Hisbullah yang akan bertugas sebagai pembawa acara dalam kegiatan hari ini. Merupakan kehormatan bagi saya untuk mendampingi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian dalam kegiatan hari ini. Forum ini merupakan kerjasama antara Bappenas, Badan Gizi Nasional, IPB University, dan World Food Program, serta menghadirkan para ahli. Kami mengucapkan terima kasih atas kehadiran para peserta dari berbagai kementerian, lembaga, akademisi, organisasi profesi, serta mitra pembangunan. Marilah kita awali kegiatan ini dengan berdoa menurut agama dan kepercayaan masing-masing. Berdoa dimulai. Berdoa selesai. Sebelum dilanjutkan ke sesi berikutnya, saya mau menyampaikan bahwa sudah disediakan alat terjemahan di tempat duduk masing-masing, jadi dapat digunakan seperlunya selama kegiatan. Dan untuk peserta yang belum mengisi daftar hadir, harap dapat mengisi daftar hadir yang tersedia di meja registrasi di luar. Berikutnya, hadirin yang kami hormati, marilah kita simak pengantar dan penyampaian konteks oleh Bapak Pungkas Bahjuri Ali, PLT Deputi Bidang Pembangunan Manusia dan Kebudayaan Bappenas. Kepada Bapak Pelaksana Tugas Deputi, kami persilakan.
Selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency Bapak Febrian Alfianto Rudiat, Vice Minister of Ministry of National Development Planning, Ibu Jennifer Rosenzweig, WFP Country Directors, and all the participants, experts that are already coming here. We are welcoming the WFP missions to Indonesia, and the mission's objective is to provide the capacity building for Indonesia as a new member of the School Meal Coalitions. The missions also facilitates the government of Indonesia in strengthening the robust monitoring and evaluation systems. So this events is joint collaborations with Bappenas and WFP to facilitate 2 international forums. Today, 6th of August, the forums with the global experts and key stakeholders in designing, monitoring, and evaluation system, as well as enhancing the Center of Excellence, involving the refining of the programs. Tomorrow at 7th of August, we have a forum with the broader participants to exchange knowledge and the best practices and strengthen the national capacities for the effective program implementations. Today's programs objectives are highlight global evidence on the economic and development benefits of the nutritious food provisions across countries, facilitate South-South learning by sharing Brazilian experiences and institutional models through WFP Center of Excellence, explore innovations for incorporating other nutrition policies into school meals and identify actionable recommendations and area for technical collaborations to support the government of Indonesia efforts to scale up the MBG programs. As we know that the Center of Excellence for MBG in Indonesia was established last year as a joint program between Bappenas, Bogor Agriculture University, and then National Nutrition Agency or BGN, and the support of UNICEF. So I would like to appreciate WFP for bringing all experts, distinguished experts to Indonesia. And we also appreciate the team from the National Center of Excellence, both from Indonesia and SMC, and all national experts, academicians, and government representatives who are present today. And the forum will be a critical point to strengthen the academia, governments, and development partners' effort in free nutritious meal program improvements. So in these occasions, I would like to also invite all of you to the session, tomorrow sessions, the second day of the International Forum. We will discuss some detailed aspects that are essential in ensuring the quality and sustainable for free nutritious meal programs. The forum will be held tomorrow in Bappenas building, the other Bappenas building in Taman Suropati from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Thank you, and it's nice to have you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak PLT Deputi atas sambutannya. Berikutnya, marilah kita menyimak sambutan oleh yang terhormat Bapak Febrian Alfianto Rudiard, Wakil Menteri PPN atau Wakil Kepala Bappenas. Kepada Bapak Wakil Menteri, kami persilakan.
Terima kasih, Ibu Jennifer Rosenzweig, World Food Program Country Director, Professor Donald Bundy, Director of Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition. It's too loud. Kecilin dikit deh. Kecilin dikit itunya. Soundnya. Okay. Mrs. Carmen Burbano, Director of School Meals Service, WFP and School Meals Coalition Secretariat. Mrs. Saskia DP, Senior Advisor, Analytic and Science for Food and Nutrition, World Food Program in Rome. Mr. Daniel Balaban, Director, World Food Program, Center of Excellence Against Hunger, Brazil. Mr. Daniel Bandoni, Food Security and Nutrition Coordination, Brazilian National Fund for Education Development. Distinguished participant, good morning, buongiorno, buzia. Warm welcome to all of you to Bappenas. First of all, I would like to say a big thank to you today for all the amazing speakers who are able to join us today. And we truly appreciate your willingness to share your insight and experience on how school meals program have made a real differences around the world. And this forum here is to create a space where we can dive into a meaningful conversation, both academic and practical, so we can make Indonesia's free nutritious meals program even stronger and more effective. Today, I believe we will hear from global experts who will share solid data and lessons learned, especially around the impact of school meals on the economy and human development. We will also learn from Brazil's experience, thanks to the WFP Center of Excellence, and explore how related programs like food fortification can be integrated into our national effort. So why is this program important, at least for us? And why now? Indonesia has a big dreams. We want to become a strong, advanced, and prosperous nation by 2045, when we celebrate our 100 years of independence. This vision are called Vision for Golden Indonesia 2045. And to get there, we need a generation that is not only well-educated, but also healthy, resilient, and productive. And right now, we are entering the peak of our demographic bonus, a time when a working age population outnumber those who are not in the workforce. And according to this projection, this golden window will hit its peak between 2030 to 2035. After that, population growth will slow, like in many countries in Asia. And this once-in-a-lifetime advantage may never return. So that's why we cannot wait. If we want to benefit from this demographic bonus, we must invest in our children and young people, and its time is now. They are the ones who will carry Indonesia forward. And it starts with something as basic but powerful as nutrition. So the free nutritious meal program will ensure that our future worker, our future thinker, our future leaders grow up with the nutrition they need to learn well, stay healthy, and to contribute productively. The Free Nutritious Meals Program is a nationwide program designed to provide nutritious meal to Islamic boarding school students, or we call it Santri in Indonesia, pregnant women, breastfeeding mothers, and children under 5. It's quite an ambitious target. And this program isn't just about food. It's not just about food. It's about unlocking the full potential of our human capital. And the Free Nutritious Meal Program aims to improve health, education, economic growth, and help reduce poverty, all of which are key ingredients to our vision in achieving a golden Indonesia in 2045. Since December 2024, we have officially joined the School Meals Coalition, a global movement to ensure no child is held back by hunger. The goals of coalition are in line with our national priorities, and our president has declared the Free Nutrition Meal Program as a top-level commitment. This is part of Indonesia's pledge to fight hunger, yes, and malnutrition, and improve the quality of our human capital. So this program is also included in our national strategic project, supporting the 3 pillars of our development, which is quality of human resources, sustainable economic growth, and poverty reduction. From today's forum, we hope to collect practical ideas and identify opportunities for collaboration, especially to help us scale up our program. And we welcome all of you to share your thought, offer your support, and help us to achieve the 4 key goals of the program. I will not deny that we will have many challenges, many critics, many controversial ideas, but I think if we're not starting now, we will not be able to start at all. So we also like to extend our deepest thanks to the World Food Program for your continued support and partnerships in 2024. And I believe your commitment is very essential in moving this agenda forward. So let me, as an Indonesian, let me close with pantun. The morning sun warms fields anew. With every meal, bright dreams come true. Let's build a future, strong and wise, where healthy children reach the skies. Thank you, and let's work together to make sure that no one child is left behind. Thank you so much.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Wakil Menteri atas sambutannya. Untuk sambutan berikutnya, marilah kita menyimak sambutan dari Ibu Jennifer Rosenzweig, Representative and Country Director, World Food Program Indonesia. To Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Selamat pagi ibu-ibu dan bapak-bapak. Terima kasih banyak untuk semua datang ke sini hari ini. Terima kasih ke semua. Saya akan bicara di bahasa Inggris. You don't need. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. I do not want to take much time in my remarks because we are here, as you say, Vice Minister, to learn from each other and enjoy this conversation. And I do not want to take time away from that. But allow me to just first offer my thanks and appreciation to Bapanas today for hosting, and Bapak Vice Minister, terima kasih banyak for your continued support and the partnership with WFP. Also, thank you to Pak Pungkas for your continued efforts in bringing all of us together. And thank you for your team and all of the support. I would also like to recognize all of the academics who are here today, our UN agency partners, and the multiple ministries and departments and presidential office who are here today for this very important conversation. Thank you so much. Today is truly an opportunity for us all. It is an opportunity for myself personally, professionally, and on behalf of WFP. Today brings together academia and the Global School Meals Coalition from around the world. We will learn a lot, myself included, from our colleagues who have traveled all the way from Brazil, only 35 hours to get here from Brazil, to share the real life lived experiences. And we hope that the discussions from Bapak Daniel from the government will absolutely enlighten us today and is an opportunity for the government of Indonesia lived experience to be exchanged with the government of Brazil lived experience and provide the pathway for future conversations. It also is humbling and an honor for myself to welcome the esteemed academics who will present, including Saskia Depay and Professor Donald Bundy. Like I said, I don't want to take any more time. I look forward to this conversation, and on behalf of WFP, may I encourage everybody who's in the room, whether you're sitting at the front table or along the back wall, to please seize this moment and ask the questions that that you would like to ask. This is Bapanas, this is your forum. So please seize the moment with us together. And I look forward to the next 2 days that we will be spending together as teams. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the remarks. Sebelum memasuki sesi paparan dan diskusi, kami mengundang Bapak dan Ibu dan seluruh peserta untuk mengikuti sesi foto bersama. Mohon untuk mengikuti arahan dari panitia untuk fotonya. Terima kasih. Hmm. Ladies, kepada Bapak dan Ibu, boleh kembali ke tempat duduk masing-masing. We are now entering the discussion session. Sesi berikutnya adalah paparan dan diskusi yang akan membahas 3 materi dengan menghadirkan pembicara dari School Meals Coalition dan jaringannya, serta Center of Excellence Against Hunger Brazil. Sesi akan dipandu oleh moderator kita hari ini, Ibu Diah Lenggogeni, Direktur Kesehatan dan Gizi Masyarakat Bappenas. Kepada Ibu Lenggo, kami persilakan untuk membantu 3 sesi paparan dan diskusi.
Very good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to use Bahasa first, and then after that, maybe a combination between in English and in Bahasa. So I would then share greetings to everyone. Yang saya hormati Bapak Bapak PLT Deputi Bidang Pembangunan Manusia dan Kebudayaan Kementerian PPN Bappenas, sekaligus staf ahli Menteri Bidang Sosial dan Penanggulangan Kemiskinan. Bapak Ibu yang mewakili lembaga WFP, tentunya Ibu Jen sebagai Country Director WFP Indonesia, beserta tim yang para expert ada dari Director School Meal Service WFP, Ibu Carmen, Bapak Daniel, and everyone. I'm sorry, Professor Bundi, Ibu Saskia. I always listen. I heard your name from Ibu Vivi. You're very famous, and looking forward to listen for your explanation of the program that already implemented. Bapak Ibu semua dari perwakilan UNICEF, perwakilan dari IPB, perwakilan para ahli. Saya lihat ada Prof. Ellen dan Prof. Fasli. Terima kasih sudah hadir. Bapak Ibu dari KSP dan peserta yang berbahagia, mohon maaf saya tidak bisa menyebutkan satu persatu. Pada kesempatan ini izinkan kami memoderasi satu forum yang luar biasa terkait sharing mungkin experience yang nantinya akan mengawali bagaimana kita menyiapkan school meal, partisipasi Indonesia dalam School Meal Coalition yang tentunya akan mendukung percepatan pelaksanaan dari makan bergizi gratis, program makan bergizi gratis di Indonesia. So, Bapak Ibu, then I would like to use English. Today, International Forum aims to provide a platform for the global exchange of knowledge and technical expertise in enhancing the implementation of the free nutritious meal program in Indonesia. So the expected outcomes from today's discussion regarding the future development of the food free nutritious meal program in Indonesia includes, the first one is the effectiveness of program management and ensuring the availability of the food supply chains in the context of the feeding program. And the second one, we are expecting that we can learn how to develop a very good design and methodology, especially for evaluating the impact of the feeding program on nutrition, education, the economy, and the poverty alleviation in Indonesia. The third one is that the governance and organization that already implemented in Indonesia is also supported by the Center of Excellence, working with the IPB University, and also UNICEF and WFP and others stakeholders that will support the enhancement of the business process of nutritious feeding program. And the fourth one, we are expecting that we have a strategic and technical policy recommendation to bolster the improvement of the nutritious feeding program to achieve optimal impact in terms of nutrition, education, the economy, and poverty alleviation. So we will have 3 topics of discussion. For the first session, we will discuss the measuring of the impact of school meal program. We would like to listen the global evidence, evaluation of the methodology and strategic framework. The second session, we then focus on scientific basis for operationalizing the nutritious food supply chain, including fortified food in the national school meal program. And the third session will then highlight how the Brazil government optimized the role of Brazil Center of Excellence, promoting South-South cooperation to strengthen school meal program. So I think that's the 3 sessions that we will then discuss in this morning event. So maybe I would like to highlight for the first session, we are expecting that we want to listen how countries have assessed the economic and strategic impact of school meal programs, with particular emphasis on developing a logical framework, understanding the contribution of evidence-based design to measurable outcomes, and exploring the methodologies employed to measure impacts. And again, the primary focus will be on impact measurement based on the 4 main thematic objectives of the Free Nutritious Meal Program. Again, we want to focus how it impacts to education, how it impacts to the nutrition, and economic also poverty evaluation. So I think that's setting the context that I will give. And I would like to give the floor, this important session to the first one. The speaker is Professor Donald Bundy, Director of Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition. Professor Donald Bundy is currently professor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine with 40 years of experience on the health of school children. Chair of Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition of the Global School Meal Coalition, one of the most successful multilateral institutions arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, supported by 1,100 experts. The consortium provides evidence-based guidance to 108 member countries worldwide, feeding more than 420 million children daily. A very huge program. Yeah. And then Professor Bundy is also senior advisor to the UN World Food Program and fellow of the Center for Global Development and Lineker College, Oxford. Sorry if I misspell it. So this is a very, I would like to share another very excellent experience, Professor Bundy. You're a senior advisor to the Global Health Team of the Bill Gates Foundation, and then lead education and health specialist to the World Bank, and also professor in the Epidemiology Center, University of Oxford. So the floor is yours, Professor, to share your material, please.
Thank you, Saskia. Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. I think it's, I'm just going to briefly mention a couple of things and then come back to some other issues. I want to say that I first worked on this topic in Indonesia. Thank you. Is this working okay? It's okay. Yeah, so some 3 decades ago, I worked in Java in Semarang on a project which was a government project to develop school health and nutrition. With at that time, it was Professor Satoto from the university there, but it was also with IBP, and it was one of the early pilot projects around this issue, and it's been remarkable for me to follow the development of Indonesia over those 30 years, a country transformed over that time. But it's a real pleasure to reconnect at this point. I do have a slide presentation, but what I would like to do is to share that with everybody. So if people wish to refer to it, they can look at this. I don't think I want to give you a lecture on this, but to give a sense of what are some of the key issues. So I think what I would like to do is perhaps pass on to my colleague, Carmen Burbano, who can introduce the coalition, and I can explain then how I work with the coalition. So thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Prof. Bandi. Maybe I would like to then explain your portfolio, Ibu Carmen, so everyone will know you, if it's okay. So Ibu Carmen Burbano is Director for School Meals Service WFP and School Meals Coalition Secretariat. Now you manage the position in Peru. You have managed the position in Peru, Rome, Colombia, Ethiopia, Kenya, Malawi, and Tanzania, and provide temporary support to earthquake relief effort in Haiti and Nepal. You're the expert in school feeding and advise the government of China, Colombia, and Kenya. Ghana also among other for the partnership with the World Bank. And you also co-authored the most influential publication in school feeding over the last 10 years, Reimagining School Feeding, a human capital investment in health, education, social protection, and agriculture, the School Feeding Source Book, and the Rethinking School Feeding published by World Bank. Very excellent. We are expecting for that. So again, you authored the WFP flagship publication, The State of School Feeding Worldwide 2013, and conceive and draft WFP Global School Feeding Program. So please, the floor is yours, Ibu Carmen, to explain your experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So whenever we come to countries, generally Dawn and I travel together, and so we call it the Dawn and Carmen Show. This is what it's called. First of all, let me say what a pleasure it is to be here. We have been admiring the efforts of the Indonesian government and what you are doing from Rome and from afar. And so it's wonderful to be here. And I want to say that what the government has committed to, what your really important and impressive objectives are, the scale up of the program and your commitments to the country, but also internationally, are extremely impressive. Specifically also because sometimes when we come to countries and we start engaging in this way with governments, one of the things that we start by doing is by telling them that school meals and feeding programs, particularly school meal programs, go much beyond just feeding children, that there is a human capital dimension, there's an economic development dimension, there's a poverty reduction dimension, there's a health and food systems dimension to these programs. And therefore, the evidence that we have, and you'll hear some of that from Dawn, is that these are really platforms for economic and human development in countries. You seem to already have understood that. And what's interesting about how the government is designing the program is that you are really taking that very much into consideration as you allocate funding, as you implement the program. The potential for this program seems to be very, very clear, and that is something very impressive. We see that that strategic view of school meals as a strategic investment, a strategic policy, has worked very well for Brazil, for example, and we'll hear from our Brazilian colleagues later today. So I wanted to start by acknowledging already your strategic vision on MBG and how important that is, because you're already incorporating a lot of the lessons learned, a lot of the evidence base that we have internationally, and you've taken that on board. Once the program in Indonesia is scaled up to reach the more than 80 million people that you are expecting to reach, Indonesia would be together with the largest programs in the world, including India's program, including China's program, including Brazil, including the United States and others. So the Indonesian program would become one of the largest programs in the world, which is an interesting group to belong to. So I also wanted to maybe send a message that you are not alone. There are many countries that are both setting up and scaling up their programs or have decades of experience that are part of this school meals coalition that was mentioned this morning, that I think is part of this conversation as well. The Vice Minister mentioned the School Meals Coalition that Indonesia joined at the end of the year by an announcement of the President. And I wanted to take just a few minutes to explain a bit what this is, what this coalition means, and what it could mean for Indonesia as we move forward. Because we're here, hopefully, on the first of various dialogues that we can establish with you. This is the beginning of a conversation, not the end or just the only conversation that we will have. So 4 years ago, President Macron, the government of Finland, and later the President Lula, the government of Brazil, essentially set up a conversation with various governments to say, these programs seem to be very strategic, as we've said. These programs can really be a really important policy priority for governments that are interested in reducing hunger, in tackling poverty reduction, in tackling issues on nutrition and education. And how about creating a conversation, a coalition of governments that can talk to each other, share experiences, learn from each other, and start to create a global movement to expand access to meals in schools around the world. The School Meals Coalition was created in 2021. It was launched in October in the context of the Food Systems Summit. At that moment, there were about 30 governments, mainly presidential level, that joined President Macron at that moment and the government of Finland in that big call to action. Now, as we speak, the coalition has 109 governments that have joined. So the movement is now quite large. That includes, of course, the announcement of Indonesia that has been moving. But what's also interesting, it's a conversation among governments, for governments, but it's also 140 partner organizations that have joined the coalition to support these governments in their scale up and improvement plans. WFP is one of those partners. We host the Secretariat of the School Meals Coalition, which I am the director of. But the main UN agencies are also partners. UNICEF is here, FAO, WHO, UNESCO, and the major development partners, including the World Bank, and most of the regional banks are there. The NGOs, think tanks, academia, and you'll hear from the academic piece of the coalition in a second. So my second message, I think, is that by being part of this large global conversation now, Indonesia, I think, has much to learn, but also much to offer the world. And what I'm interested in as I'm here in Indonesia for the next 4 days is trying to understand, how do we start an agenda, a conversation with the government of Indonesia as you start your membership in the coalition. And I'll give you some examples of how other countries have taken advantage of their membership of the coalition. So, for example, the government of Rwanda, President Kagame, when he joined the coalition, he committed to universalizing the program, so reaching every child in the country with school meals. This was 2021. And he established an agenda with the coalition at that time. So we established a research agenda with the government of Rwanda. This has been very much spearheaded by the research consortium, who you will hear from in a minute. They established also a conversation around finance and sustainable financing plans to make sure that this program is sustainable in the very long term. So there has been a discussion with development partners around how to make sure that that program is financed appropriately. They had specific requests around technical assistance in supply chains, food safety, monitoring standards, and others. So now there is a lot of collaboration between the government of Rwanda and several development partners, including UN agencies, around some of the technical details and technical assistance that has been provided. Now, Rwanda didn't stop there. President Kagame was interested also in becoming a regional leader. So Rwanda started the East Africa Regional School Meals Coalition Dialogue, which Rwanda chaired for East Africa since 2021. There were a series of meetings of the East African governments that Rwanda hosted as they started to share what they were doing and how they were doing it. President Kagame has also participated in a number of international events, sharing what Rwanda is learning and vice versa. So there are various ways in which governments are establishing agendas both to receive support from other countries, from other partners of the coalition, but also positioning and sharing what's happening in the country elsewhere. The same thing happened with Ukraine, for example. The government of Ukraine in 2023 started a dialogue with the School Meals Coalition and hosted a European school meals event last year, but also established a research agenda with the partners of the coalition, specifically the Research Consortium. So there are various ways in which the governments of different governments of the coalition are establishing long-term plans with the coalition, both with governments, with the different partners, and also positioning themselves internationally. So what I'm hoping, what I'm representing here is not just the World Food Program, although as the leading agency in school meals, of course, WFP is here to support you, but really an enormous universe of partners and countries and a dialogue that we can help you establish within that broader coalition, which is now quite a global movement, I would say, a very big conversation. So you're not alone. I think the main message is here that we can bring now and in the future, if we understand what your concerns are, what your desires for dialogue are, what your needs for assistance are, we can establish a conversation. Lastly, I will say the coalition has a number of initiatives that were established specifically to support governments. The first of those initiatives is the Research Consortium. Don will explain in a second what they do. The second one is the Sustainable Financing Initiative. As I mentioned before, this initiative was established specifically to support governments with financing strategies, sustainable financing strategies. The third initiative is the Data and Monitoring Initiative. This initiative is hosted out of WFP, and specifically it was created to host and gather global data and also help to develop indicators that we can support governments to better monitor these programs. In a lot of ways, the school meals area and the monitoring and how do we measure the impact of these programs, as you'll hear from Don, is still being built. There's a lot that we still need to do. And one of the things we're very excited about is your interest in the area of monitoring, evaluation, learning, and knowledge. And so one of our interest areas is how do we establish that connection with you now, but hopefully understanding that this is going to take many years, right? This is just the beginning of a very big effort. The fourth initiative of the coalition is called Cities Feeding the Future initiative. I think they have already established connections with you. They are working with several municipalities here already. It is hosted out of the municipality of Milan. And it is one of the most important initiatives because it's connecting local government efforts, municipalities, which in many cases are actually the ones that are responsible for the implementation of these programs globally. So there's more than 100 mayors now connected in that broader initiative. How countries are connecting, it's really up to you. So you can tell us now, and we can connect during the next few days, but also beyond. How do you want us to broker those connections with the initiatives, and how would you want to establish that connection? Lastly, I would say as part of the School Meals Coalition, as I mentioned, Brazil is a co-chair. President Lula is a co-chair of the coalition, and very importantly represented here also by the government, but also by the Center of Excellence Against Hunger. Brazil has been one of the most important partners, really sharing their knowledge, sharing their experience, and obviously they're here today to do that with you. Finally, just to say, President Lula will be hosting the global summit on school meals of the School Meals Coalition in September, 18th and 19th of September. This is a very important opportunity, I think, for Indonesia, and I will invite you to really take advantage of that. The government has been invited. The invitation has been sent by the Brazilian government to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but I think it's up to you, it's up to Bapenas and others to decide how Indonesia is represented in that meeting. 109 countries are invited to come, all of the countries of the coalition, and it is going to be, this meeting happens every 2 years. It is going to be the global moment, both of sharing evidence, sharing experiences, learning from other countries, and also sharing what Indonesia is doing. So there's enormous opportunities, I think, from this moment forward. And one of the things that I said, as I said, we'd like to do with you in the next 2 days is try to set that agenda so that we can take it forward with you in the next few years. So with that introduction a little bit, I'll just give it over back to Dawn, who can then dive into some of the research elements that you're most interested in.
Yes, please, Professor, maybe like about 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I want to say how impressed I was with the discussion earlier, the presentation by the Vice Minister. When I worked with Bapanas, as I said, 30 years ago, but I've also seen how Bapanas is a real leader globally in thinking around the broad development issues. I thought highlighting the question of the golden generation, of the demographic dividend, is a very important part of your thinking around this program. You know, we tend to forget our history when we think about these things. If we think about education today, the idea of children being educated seems to us as normal as breathing. We just think it's a normal part of life. But 100 years ago, that's not what happened. People were not taught to read and write. People didn't read and write except the most elite. So the idea of universal free education, which is now a global reality, was a new idea then. And I think you are now on the edge of a new idea, which is about the well-being, the achievement, the human capital, the creation of a next generation, a golden generation that takes forward the successful development of Indonesia. And you're perceiving that as a public policy decision. This isn't some kind of trivial investment. This is a major rethinking of the way we bring up our next generation, our society, our children. And you know, it fits in very well with the global realization how important the health and physical development is to educational outcomes and so many other aspects. And so that focus on public policy is, I think, very specific to what Bapanas is trying to do here. I see that your sophisticated system has already put some slides up here. So I'm actually going to show a couple of slides. Why not? So if I could have the next slide, please. I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah. So just to give you an idea, building on what Carmen was explaining, the research consortium, which is the group that I'm representing here, the research consortium is a group that was set up by the coalition of countries. And let me emphasize, this is a coalition of 109 countries, including Indonesia. This is your coalition, and it is your coalition that has asked for the creation of a consortium to collect the evidence to support what it is you intend to do. And this is just a representation here. At the top, we have the coalition, that's the countries, that's you, that's the bosses. We have a small coordinating secretariat in the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, but all the work is done globally. And here we've got examples of the kinds of communities of practice that are necessary for that global work. And what we're trying to do is bring together the evidence so that countries make their own decisions about their own programs. And if I could have the next slide, please, just to emphasize how important all this is. This is mentioning that the scale of the operation. We have more than 1,200 professors and practitioners, people like yourselves, it's actually now from 117 countries and from 600 different institutions, all of whom work on school meals, different aspects of school meals, all of those different communities of practice that we mentioned. And I call this map the points of light. It shows where across the globe there's all this expertise, and that expertise is a shared expertise. And of course, what needs to be created is an Indonesia-specific program. There's no question about this. You can't go to some other country and have an example that's the perfect fit for what you want to do. Indonesia is one of the biggest countries in the world now. It's an extraordinary, you know all these things, an extraordinarily diverse country. It's large physically, but it's large in terms of population too. So it presents very specific challenges that only you can solve. And that what the research consortium offers in that context is connections with what other countries are doing, but it also offers those countries the opportunities to learn from what you have done. And that's also a crucial part of this. Go to the next slide, please. I'm not going to take all of these slides, but just to give you a sense of, here we've got the case studies that are already going on. So more than half of the 109 countries are already doing case studies, looking at detail in what they're doing and sharing that information with you. We would want to think about sharing what you're doing with the rest of the world as well. Can I have the next slide, please? I want to emphasize here that the research consortium isn't about one group of countries. This is one of our strong areas of work is with the European Commission, with the European Union, and with Europe about their programs and how, when we talk about value for money, we've looked at countries like Sweden, which show that they're investing $1 and getting $7 back. I have the next slide, please. And I want to emphasize that this is about OECD countries. This is not about one particular group of countries. So we have case studies already available from Japan and Canada and the USA and the UK and things, and we're currently developing case studies with China and Korea. So I want to emphasize that this is a truly global partnership, and that's what we've been working to create. And I want to move on from that to say that one of the crucial factors here is that we're talking about an investment program. And I was very impressed with a lot of the publications coming out of Bapanas over the last several months, describing the breadth of that investment. And we also heard it from the Vice Minister again today, that this is, although the program is called Makan Bergizi Gratis, it's not just about food, and it's not just about nutrition. It is about those things too, of course, but it is much bigger than that. It is a much grander vision than that. And it's that investment, crucially, is coming from across many sectors. And this is one of the reasons that my colleague, Professor Stefan Vergey, who's sitting here with us from Harvard University, who's been leading in the community of practice around value for money. That's why he's part of this, our delegation today. Because what's very clear is that the return on investment depends on these additive sectors. It's not just returns to one sector that matter, it's multiple sectors. And that if we focus on building infrastructure, on supply chains, on the business processes, if those are our focus, then we can lose sight of the returns we see to the many other sectors that are involved. And I think that this is a crucial point. The value for money of this investment depends on the additive nature of those investments. And I know I've got experts around us here who very well see that point. So let me just emphasize some of those. So for education, and the Vice Minister emphasized this one, for education, to leverage education, the well-being of the child is a crucial part of that process. If the child, the well-being of the child, and so this year actually UNESCO for the first time has made this a clear public statement that the well-being of a child is crucial to their educational outcome. And that educational outcome, of course, will determine their profitability to the nation, the value of them, their contribution to human human capital. But equally, we can think about health as a return on investment. I'm not going into all the details here, but just some that people often don't think of. One of the crucial things, and we've been working with the EAT Commission and EAT Lancet on these issues, one of the crucial things that we see is that what people eat, of course, determines their health lifelong. It's our dietary preferences that are a crucial part of the social determinants of our health. And what we learn at school, what we learn to eat, and what we choose to eat for the rest of our lives has crucial consequences for outcomes. And one of our big areas of focus now is on non-communicable diseases of middle age, of diabetes, of cardiometabolic disease, which are, of course, the most expensive diseases for the health systems of this world to treat. Those are the biggest challenges. And it seems that we can deal with those challenges early on in life and make a difference. And I was very impressed that Bapanas was emphasizing that in some of the discussion around this program. And then there are other simple things I just want to mention. On social protection, what we see from Japan now, the shuku iku approach, whereby the school forms a social dimension to the growing up of children. The children who may never sit down at home with their families in a very structured way can sit down at school in a structured way and learn etiquette, learn behavior, learn social skills that in our modern societies we're so slow to teach our children. And this is also an output of the program. And there are so many other things: the job creation dimension, the agricultural dimension, particularly the promotion of foods that are less damaging to our planetary health, to our countries. And why am I mentioning those today is because you have asked us to think particularly around the issues of impact assessment. All of those things need to be part of your impact assessment going forward. It's not going to be enough to have measured nutrition or education today. If you're going to get a baseline, we're going to have to think about what are all of the factors that you are expecting to change as a result of this excellent program. And all of those need to be decided in parallel with the effort to actually roll the program out. And it's those are the kinds of questions that I think we will all wish to answer together. And so I'm just going to say that one of the things I'm hoping to come away from this visit is experts from Indonesia also joining the Academy of the Research Consortium, also being leaders in the thinking, the global thinking. And if we go to the very last slide, it just shows the way in which you can sign up to the Academy. And I put these slides together. Actually, I'll probably have a chance to talk about these tomorrow. But what I wanted to do was just share the whole slide deck with you so that you could have a chance to have a read and you could ask any questions that may come out of it. But we are looking for your expertise to connect with the global expertise on this area, and for Indonesia to be part of the global movement to develop school meals at the same time as you're part of the national movement to roll out this extraordinary program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Carmen and Prof. Bandi. I would like to highlight the benefit for Indonesia to be part of the School Meal Coalition, that we can share evidence, we can gather evidence and then choose which one to be applied according to our characteristic, our challenges and problems. And I think after this, Ibu Saskia will share your experience. You work with many countries, and I've joined the sharing session for the SAP Plus, how you gather all menus from countries then to be selected for the meals for the school. So maybe I can introduce you first. So Ibu Saskia Depe is Senior Advisor Analytical and Science for Food and Nutrition World Food Program. And right now is as the adjunct associate professor at the Friedman School of Nutrition, Science and Policy, Tufts University, Boston. You work in public health nutrition for almost 25 years, which focus on the science, practical application, policy, strategies, and your expertise is including in the food and nutrition security, diets and climate, micronutrient, fortification and nutrition, and the context of social protection, HIV, AIDS, and TBC, tuberculosis. So as Prof. Bandi already shared that there's 4 sectors that we can focus. For example, the social protection, the education, health and nutrition, and also the agriculture. Maybe you can then combine and explain how you then prepare the program in each country. Thank you very much. Please, the floor is yours.
Ya, terima kasih Bu Dia, Pak Pungkas, semua. Senang sekali bisa kembali ke Indonesia dan share expertise. Saya juga akan melanjut pakai bahasa Inggris. So yeah, very great pleasure to be here and to speak about especially nutrition in the nutritious meal program from Indonesia and to share experience from across the world. So my career actually started in Indonesia, in Bogor, where I did the PhD research on vitamin A deficiency, together with Pak Muhilal, Prof. Karyadi, and many friends around the room. So what I like to do, I can get the next slide, is to discuss, I'll break it into 2 parts. One is really looking at the evidence of need for micronutrients and the potential of the contribution from fortified foods to meeting the nutritional needs, and how do we know who needs more nutrition and how can we provide that through the school meals program and through adding fortified rice into the program. And then we'll review experience from countries that are also on this road, who are using fortified rice in school meals and social assistance programs. So let's start with the evidence. So on the next slide, the WHO has issued a guideline for the fortification of rice. So they've reviewed the evidence for the impact of fortifying rice on micronutrient status. So they're recommending, based on that evidence review, to add iron, to add folic acid. You may also add vitamin A, although cooking oil is a better carrier for that, but you can consider it, there is evidence. And then we've written a chapter in the publication on food fortification in a globalized world, where we really zoom in on the how of rice fortification. And we're actually recommending that you can add 7 micronutrients to rice. We're adding micronutrients to rice to improve the intake. So if you look at the next slide. Yeah, so malnutrition, well, many of us, I think, know the consequences of micronutrient deficiencies. This really slows down human capital development. It impacts health. So it has to be adequate from very early on in life. We're talking first 1,000 days, first 8,000 days. It's really across our life cycle, starting in pregnancy, the nutrition needs to be adequate. So it's really a focus on the dietary intake with provision of school meals, with provision of meals to other age groups, and with our fortification, we want to impact that intake in order to impact nutritional status. So we know from the evidence that rice fortification contributes to reducing the deficiencies when it is adequately fortified, when it's consumed in the expected quantities, because we fortify to achieve a certain level of intake, which is then based on the quantity of the rice intake. So it also has to be stored and prepared as per instructions. That's when it can be making its contribution. Next slide. Yeah, so this is data from a recent meta-analysis. So this is the only evidence on the rice fortification that I'll show. You can see on that graph with all the dots, if the hemoglobin levels are low, then adding iron to the rice will improve the hemoglobin levels. So it addresses iron deficiency and therefore also anemia. So on that forest plot, you can see the impact of fortifying rice with iron. So that proves also that if you add iron to fortified rice kernels, you add that, blend that with rice, the iron is absorbed. So if you add other micronutrients also to that kernel, that will also be absorbed. So that is the basis for also, as per the WHO guideline, also adding folic acid. But then also we can add zinc, we can add B12, we can add B1, we can also add B3, B6. So there's 7 micronutrients that WFP will add to fortified rice if we are asked to provide advice, and countries decide what they'd like to add based on their public health needs. So it's really a carrier to improve micronutrient intake. Next one. So we know that micronutrient deficiencies pose a serious public health problem, but we really want to know what are the needs. So we should ideally conduct biochemical surveys to assess micronutrient status. But those surveys, you can click a few times, thank you. Those surveys take a long time and they're expensive. We would also like to ask for actual intake so that we can assess the intakes. These are 24-hour recall surveys. And we want to know which foods are being consumed, which ones can be fortified and hence have an impact. Please click again. Yeah, you can also click one more time. Yeah. So the time and the cost and the capacity to do this is limited. So often we see countries may embark on a national survey, but they do it maybe every 10 years and it costs a lot of money, and that reduces our frequency of being able to do so. But this is not the only way in which we can have an indication of the needs. So on the next slide, sharing the results that many of you will have seen from the Fill the Nutrient Gap study in Indonesia in 2021, using the Susanas data from 2019. And this shows the proportion of the population in the different provinces that cannot afford a diet that meets their nutritional needs. And you can see that that varies. And it varies because of the price of food differences, but also because of the income differences. So how much money do you have and what could that buy? So with any program on nutrition and public health nutrition, we really want to make sure that we put the interventions there where they're needed most. That's where we start. So from here, we already have an indication of where the intakes are below the requirements. And next one. So we can also use the Susanas data. They are household consumption and expenditure survey data. And in Indonesia, they are collected twice a year, every year. So it's a very rich source of proxy for food consumption data, because it shows what the households buy, what they have available, and therefore what the consumption is, more or less. Yeah, you can click a few more times on this one. So we can use that information from the Susanas to estimate the consumption of foods, of food groups, and of nutrients. And then we know the household composition. So you can say per person or per adult female equivalent. This is the intake of these nutrients. So we know also what food groups provide the source of these nutrients. We can estimate the risk of inadequacy. We can also, of course, convert this to different age groups. So the female equivalent is just an indication of a quantity of food, and if you have an adolescent girl, if you have a child 5 years old, you can also get this estimate from those data. So then we also see the fortifiable vehicle, who can be reached with that. And if we know how much we like to fortify with, and you have a standard for rice fortification now for Indonesia, you can estimate the contribution that that can make to intake. So I'll show you one example from us having done this analysis with India, with the data that they have. On the next slide. So this shows the inadequacy of folic acid intake in India. And you see it across the country for different geographic areas. Then we modeled the current standard in India for rice fortification and its distribution through the public distribution system. You lower the risk of inadequacy by 5%. So yeah, there is some reduction, but it's not that great. And that is actually because the standard in India is rather low for the folic acid level. And it was just a publication this week, indeed saying that standard should be increased. So we also modeled, so if you can click again, a higher level of fortification. And then you can see that it really can reduce the deficiencies. And this is with the distribution through the social assistance program. So similar modeling can be done for Indonesia, and we can then see where do we need this impact the most, and how much of a reduction of inadequacy can we get when we fortify the rice. Next one. Yeah, so I also really want to stress that with, oh, sorry. There was no animation on that one. Yeah, thanks. With fortification, we really aim to shift the distribution of intake to the right. The estimated average requirement is the level below which we define as an inadequate intake. So we want the distribution to sit to the right of the EAR. So with our fortified food, we aim to achieve an intake level of the EAR, so that is like the base given intake, and that we shift the population intake to the right. So that's where we base the quantity of the fortification is based on that. Yeah, so not saying more about it, but really to say for these fortificants, this is the level at which we add it, so that we lower the risk amongst those who are really in need of an increased intake, because they are at risk of deficiency. Next one. So if we then tune to, if you take 1 meal per day with fortified rice, that makes a contribution to your needs. But we have fortified with the assumption that the fortified food is consumed throughout the day. So 1 meal is provides a part of what they should contribute. So looking here at children consuming 100 grams of fortified rice, the contribution it can make to meeting their iron requirement depends on their age and hence their need. So for an adolescent female, 100 grams contributes 15% of her need, but for a child 4 to 6 years old, it contributes 50% of their need. So we have to think quantitatively. We are fortifying for the general population. We are applying in a specific target group. How are we applying? Are they getting this just from their school meal, or are they also getting this at home? Then you're slowly moving to reaching that target of at least the EAR. From here, we'll look at a couple of examples of countries that are applying fortified rice in their school meal program. And give us the next slide. Yeah, so countries that have integrated fortified rice in social protection, including school meals, are listed here. And we'll look at the first 4 of them in a bit more detail. So we'll start with Peru. Yeah, so in Peru, the journey started in 2017. They introduced fortified rice in the school feeding program to replace the regular rice that was already in the program. And this created an institutional demand. So because it was needed for the school meals, the suppliers got a signal that they had to start producing fortified rice and that there was a market for it because it was the national program that wanted to buy fortified rice. So they were the private sector and the regulatory from the government was supported by WFP to have this go hand in hand. And Indonesia, of course, has already also started on this program, on this journey. So then there came a law that mandated rice fortification, and then this also got included in other social assistance programs. So creating a further demand and a further benefit for those that need that fortification. And in the homegrown school feeding pilot, that's where it's used. This pilot has fresh foods. So it also is a link with the food system, the production, also with the Ministry of Social Development, Agriculture. Next one. So India, and I'm sure you've heard about India. I know there's been exchanges with India as well. There, over 700 million people now receive fortified rice through their public distribution system. They have close to 700 producers of these fortified rice kernels that are blended with the fortified rice. And an important point is the cost increment of the rice. So actually the increment is really low, and that goes to show the economies of scale that they have been able to achieve. That's where you get your reductions. When you start your pilot, you shouldn't look at the cost yet, because of course you need to know the cost, but that cost is not representative for when you are reaching scale. And I'm also showing some publications where you can get much more information. Then a slide on Bangladesh. So on the lessons learned between Bangladesh and India. I think for time, I'm not going to go in too much detail, but it is really, you need that local innovation and local technologies as you scale up production of fortified rice. And then you can integrate it into different programs. But the ask from those programs will also enable you to reach that scale. The awareness raising among the population is really important, and also the coordination between different actors and having a clear roadmap. One example from Sri Lanka. This was Bangladesh, sorry. We can go to the next one. Yeah, so in Sri Lanka, implementation started 2 years ago, but they also already did their homework on standards, on acceptability pilots, on trials. I want to emphasize or just look at their modality of providing the school meals. So the Ministry of Education pays cooks based on the number of meals that they have served. So the cooks provide the meal to the children, and then at the end of the month, they get reimbursed for having served those meals. So the cooks, they buy locally and they buy on credit. So once they are paid, they can pay back to their creditors. By introducing the fortified rice, that supply chain goes directly to the school, to the cook. So now the cook receives the rice that they should prepare, and they buy their other foods in addition, as they always did. So that meant there had to be a change of resource flow within government. So the Ministry of Education has to pay the Ministry of Agriculture to fortify the rice and to deliver that fortified rice. And they had to have money to buy the rice in order to fortify the rice to be able to deliver it. So the whole flow of funding and responsibility had to be adjusted because of this program. So it's an interesting experience from there. And then we'll come to the recommendations. So these are the recommendations on the production and the distribution of fortified rice in the nutritious meals and beyond to reduce micronutrient inadequacies. So large-scale fortification programs need to reach the population at the highest risk of inadequate intake. So with the field nutrient gap, we have an indication. You have other data on anemia, on stunting that gives an indication of where the needs are highest. And those programs really need to penetrate there. There's a need to design a roadmap and a coordination mechanism for the implementation of the nutritious meals program, including that provision of fortified rice where that is most needed. The institutional procurement that you have from school meals and other social assistance can really leverage the supply chain. So you get your supplies going when you are actually saying you're interested to buy. And when you're interested to buy, you specify the quantity, you specify the quality, you specify the timeline. So then it becomes really concrete. And that's what you need for that supply side to get into action. A larger demand will create efficiencies in your supply chain and will drive down the added cost. Of course, there should be awareness raising so that people know what is this about, how is this done, how is this best prepared. And when cash is the modality for the locally sourced meals, which it is here, the fortified rice should be supplied directly to the kitchen. So that supply chain should also be designed efficiently. And then the assessment of the likely inadequacies of micronutrient intake so that you can focus the efforts there where they're needed most. So yeah, next slide, just to thank you very much and to be ready for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Saskia. Bapak Ibu, distinguished participant, I know everyone would like to ask. You have many questions in your head, perhaps, but we need to listen the real experience from the Brazil government. The next session, we will hear from Mr. Daniel Balaban, Director, WFP Center of Excellence Against Hunger Brazil. I don't know, Mr. Daniel Balaban first or Mr. Daniel Bandana?
Just to chat, I think that it's important before we present the Center of Excellence, we make a presentation about how works the Brazilian school meals program. So Mr. Daniel Bandoni will start. Okay.
Let's wait in the presentation. So first, good morning. I'm honored to share with you today the Brazil experience with school feeding programs. So it's an enormous responsibility. All the time you talk about Brazil. So let's try to talk more about Brazil experience. So next, please. So let's start to talk about Brazil. Brazil is the largest country in the South America with more than 2,000 million inhabitants and in a big area. So the Brazil population is diverse. You have many realities, income realities, different nutrition realities, different food cultures across the country. So because it's a large country with a large different populations. So Brazil National School Feeding Program is a universal program. So you offer free meal for all students during the time that the students stay at school, provide at least one free meal. Your goal is not only contribute contributes to the growth, to learning, but also to lifelong healthy eating, work with food and nutrition education, side that is the schools, and obvious offer a high quality meals for your students. Next, please. And this is some numbers. The scale of Brazil school feeding program is significant. You reach neither of 40 million of students in more than 140,000 schools, and including over 6,000 of schools in indigenous areas, in traditional Brazil community areas, in remote areas. You have some parts of Brazil that only reach by boat. You use the animals to deliver foods for these schools. So you have a large numbers of realities and the different contexts. This have a big impact in your budget, in the costs of the food, and the way that you try to organize your school feeding program. So next, please. So talk about the legal framework. It's very fast here. The first, your national constitution define school meal as a right for students. These are stay in your principal law education too, so that define our obligation for Brazil providing meals at schools. And talk about your school feeding law. It's you released in 2009. Daniel Balaban is directly involved to create this law here. And this law defines the goals, the principles, the responsibilities, the federal government responsibilities, the local government, and the general rules about the Brazil school feeding program. Next, please. So let's start to talk about the impact of PNAE in Brazil. Next, you have a large number of studies. I highlighted here 3 because it's universities and these national studies. So what they show, these studies? So the social and educational impact of Brazil school feeding program. For example, between 2013 and 2017, PNAE significantly increased the income of family farms. Especially this lower, the family farms with lower incomes. Moreover, the cities that use more foods by family farms has been correlated with improved students' academic performance in language and math. Brazil has a test that you made 2 years, and these cities that buy more foods from family farms have the best results in Brazilian tests. And the economic return. So the PNAE also generates strong economic returns. For every Brazilian real invest in family farming, the GDP, PIB, numbers in Portuguese, increase up to 66%. So these studies demonstrate that school feeding is not only a social program or educational program. It's a powerful economic policy to develop family farms and these rural areas in Brazil. Next, please. And now talk about how you finance the Brazil PNAE. And this is, I think, is very interesting. Brazil use, because the large of the country, the number of the schools, the size of the country, you work in decentralized way. So what's this work? The federal government transfer automatically funds from the cities and states. So you transfer without the need for contracts or agreements. And these cities and states are responsible to elaborate the menus, produce the meals, and serve the meals in schools, okay? You have two systems to deliver the meals. The most common is the kitchen inside schools. So it's more common for us. So work with this, all the schools had kitchen and produce the meals. And some cities prefer to use this similar system that I watched yesterday. It's a central kitchen that produce and deliver in schools the food. Specific, some middle-sized cities, but it's not so common in Brazil. In general, you deliver the foods and the schools made the portions locally, okay? And about the food price, it's another question. Because you use this decentralized way, food price is defined locally. In general, in Brazil, you use a public way to buy food. So it's you call a public call or licitation way but the process of to buy foods, it's public, everybody can access, read the foods that the city buy, how much it costs. So you work in this way in Brazil. Again, because the different realities, the different costs of food, is impossible for us determine a price, a mean price for all the countries. Next, please. So this is the way that you transfer the money for your cities. It's a very easy way. Use the number of students, the number of the days. In Brazil is 200 days per school year. And you define these per capita values. So you define specific, here I put in dollars, not the best way to show, because Brazil is not a strong, your real is not so strong, but it's very easy. You take this 10 cents, the number of multiplied by number of students by 200, and the cities know exactly how much they will receive for do the meals, okay? And the specific point, the federal funds only buy foods. Like the another coast, like in facilities at schools, the city and states put the budget, okay? So federal funds only to buy foods, because in Brazil, you divide these financials, educational financials in federal, cities, and states funds. Okay. Next. So I speak about the impact, the financial, but I like to highlight 4 key points that explain the Brazilian school feeding program success. The first of one, it's universal and free. I think it's very important that you offer meals for all students. And this is a way to create other relationships with the food. they share the meals, they share the different cultures inside the school, different realities. Everybody eat the same meal. It's a very beautiful thing. And this another three key points I try to explain a little better. Nutrition guidelines, Brazil offer these nutrition guidelines, the social participation, and the family farming. So let's move and talk a little more about these three key points. Next, please. So let's start talk about the nutrition guideline. The first thing is school menus are designed by nutritionists. All the series need to have a nutritionist. So because the idea is these menus was developed consider the food culture, the reality of produce foods in the places, but you gave some general rules, general guides, because it's very important to promote quality meals. So the first is your nutrition school feeding program is ensure that at least 8% of federal funds must be used to buy fresh and minimal processed foods. This is will rise for 8.5 in the next year. And put a limit to buy a processed and ultra processed food 50%, and you'll decrease in the next year for 10%. So you try to use more minimal fresh foods, prepare these foods at school, and use less cookies, this processed meat, okay? You have specific lists about restrict food at meals, like sweet preparations, and some another foods, and prohibit foods, like sugar sweet beverage, trans fat. This is prohibited to offer in school meals, okay? Next. And they gave for nutritionists too, specific nutritional values for energy and macronutrients. In Brazil, you have two realities. You have a part-time schools and full-time schools. So you need to separate these nutritional requirements for part-time schools and the full-time schools. And if you see, you create a specific rules to these indigenous and the community schools, because these schools in general receive students with poor nutrition. So for these specific in part-time schools, the meals at least 30%. To others, 20%, and full-time schools at least 7%. Okay, next. And here show that you put this 20, 30, and 7%, you gave this table for nutritionists to reach these specific develops. Now, you develop this in our guidelines to facilitate for nutritionists. Next. So talk about the food safety. Brazil has a national laws for food handling. So you don't have specific laws for food safety in schools, but you have laws for food service include schools. So all the food service, restaurants, cafeterias in workplace need to reach these food range laws. Brazil has decentralized inspections in this food service space. So this is a health responsibility. Minister of Health are in charge of this. And the school nutritionists are in charge of monitoring school meal productions to prevent of foodborne disease. So They gave trainings for the in the kitchens. They elaborate the manuals, the operas, how can I say this? This opera, the manuals, technical ways to cooking the foods. Yes, exactly. And it's a good point of Brazil that you have 90% of schools have access to quality water. So it's a questions that you solve in Brazil. Not only the schools, but you have this large coverage about the water access. So it's a very good for the food safety. Next, please. Talk about social participation. I think this is another important point that Brazil work. You have in Brazil school feeding council. So all the cities, all the states must have this school feeding council. This school feeding council is a way that the school people, the school communities, the educational workers, the parents talk about school, looking for the quality of foods, the quality of meal, asking for better things for the mayor, for the authorities. So it's very important to organize, and the society see the society part of the process to serve meals at school. I think this is very important from Brazil and work very well. Next, please. So now talking about family farming, it's another key point in Brazil school feeding program. I think the buy foods from family farm is one of the most transformative aspects of the PNI. Again, we started this in 2009, and this increased the quality of meals. Today, the school feeding programs buy a large amount of money of these family farms. So it's very important for farmers, for schools. So when I look, what you reach when you buy family farm? First, health foods. In general, this fresh food was sold by these family farms, diversity, and the local culture. So you try to buy the local farms. These local farms produce typical foods. That the food is part of this culture, where this child, the students stay. No, and for family farms, it's more income, local development, short supply chains. It's a very important because they produce and deliver near of schools. So this food, all the time, it's near of when you cooking. And this productive practice, I think the students eat many times the foods that the parents produce, your family produce, and they eat this food at school. Next, please. So you buy direct from family farms, and you pay the market price. So you pay the same price that you buy in supermarket, you pay for this family farm. It's very important because many times in Brazil history, you have people to buy a small money for family farms and sold for schools with much more expensive. and the family farm receive small quantities, but the states pay much more. So now you pay direct of family farms and you pay the market price. It's very important. You have some priorities. First priority is local produced foods and the agrarian reform statements and traditional communities. This is the prioritized to sold for schools. Né? And in recent years, to put this specific rule for organic foods, so states and the cities can pay a bonus 30% in prices for these organic foods. I think this is very important to change the way that you produce foods using less fertilizants and another products and try to develop organic farmers. Next. So it's this, many thanks. And I like to invite us to know more Brazilian experience. Tomorrow I will talk a little more, but Brazil is open to talk and to discuss more about the Brazil experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Daniel Bandani. Mr. Daniel Balaban, would you share maybe your experience as the director for WFP Center of Excellence, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's important for us to be here with you. I know that many of you must be tired of all these presentations. The most important is to exchange questions and listen to your thoughts, things that you would like to know. But I believe that I'm the last one. So I will be very brief. The Center of Excellence in Brazil, why it was created. The Center of Excellence in Brazil is a partnership between the Brazilian government and the World Food Program to support other countries in the world in the creation of national policies on school meals programs. The idea started because I used it to be president of this institution where Daniel Bandoni now is working. And during my mandate, we created the law, the Brazilian school feeding law, that now is very important for the country and attends around 40 million students every day. So a lot of countries started to request support from Brazil because they understood the importance to create national policies on school meals. So we started working jointly with WFP. Carmen Burbano was always our main partner in headquarters, and we worked together to support these countries in national policies, in the creation of national policies, and based it on the Brazilian experience. As you know, Brazil is very large, very unequal country. The concentration of income in Brazil is tragic. Now Brazil is trying to become more equal. President Lula is trying to do this. It's not easy. Brazil has a stronger light and they don't want to, to share their wealth. But it's important because Brazil is always one of the 10 greatest economies in the world. And just 1% of population has almost 50% of wealth. So this is tragic for any country in the world. We need to change this picture. And nowadays, the Center of Excellence is working. I don't know, there's a presentation. Oh, you can, yeah, I'm saying, you can pass, please. This is just to show who we are. As I said, we were established in 2011. This is a strategic partnership between the Brazilian government and the World Food Program. So it's a global hub for technical assistance, policy advocacy, capacity strengthening, and to support countries to develop innovative program models tailored to national contexts. Of course, Brazil is just a model, but the idea of the Center of Excellence is to show up the other models that we have around the world. We have recognized expertise in home-grown school feeding, and because we are linked to smallholder farmers' production, at least 30% of the food that is served in schools must be acquired directly from the smallholder farmers. So this is very important for Brazil. Now, in Brazil, we have some municipalities that purchases 100% of the food directly from the smallholder farmers. Brazil has a very big production of food, but most part of the food production goes to exportation. And the smallholder farmers produce 70% of what Brazil consumes. So it's very important. And yes, you can pass, please. Another slide, please. So we strengthen national, this one. What we do with the countries, technical assistance. We support countries in knowledge exchange, institutional support for national leadership, capacity development. We integrate food and nutrition security elements. So since the beginning of the idea of our Center of Excellence, we supported several countries in the world, most of them in Africa, but also here in Asia and Latin America. So it's very important to understand that all these countries right now, they have a kind of model of school meals. As Daniel Bandoni showed, Brazil has different models. It's not just one model. We have centralized and decentralized models around the country. It depends on each municipality, where are the region and the culture of the region. As you know, we have indigenous people that they need more support. We have people that live in Amazon. Just to arrive there takes 2 or 3 days to arrive there. So it's similar to what the problems that you have here in Indonesia. And because they live in the rainforest and we need to achieve them with the school meals. So all the 160,000 school meals, schools in Brazil receive free school meals. It's around 40 million students. It's from the nursery or kindergartens, they receive school meals to the end of high school. So all of them, they receive for free school meals. It's important to say private schools does not receive school meals from the government because it's private. If they have money to pay for a private school, we don't need to pay for them in terms of meals. So it's important to show this. But of course, all of them, they receive a kind of meal because they pay for it. But the public schools, they are totally for free. Even if it's a son of Daniel Bandoni that has, if he has a son in public schools, he has the right to receive free school meals in the school. It's important to say that all the support that we give to the schools are demand-driven. We never go to a country and ask if they would like to receive support or they would like to work with Brazilian school meals program or the Center of Excellence. So it's important that the countries come to us. Please, you can pass the slide. Since the beginning, we received 56 different countries came to Brazil for study visits. We organized 48 national events in the countries. So numbers that a lot of countries that came and we supported. It's important to say that the most important is the commitment, the national commitment, the federal commitment. When you want to do something and you have commitment, everything is possible. Like in Brazil, the school meals program in Brazil is not easy, but the country decided to create a universal school meals program. That's why Brazil now is out of the map of hunger. The hunger in Brazil is not anymore greater than 2.5% of population. So, and the school meals program is one of the objectives that Brazil has to enhance the fight against hunger and poverty. Just to finalize, I would like to mention that the Global Alliance Against Hunger that was created during the G20 event in Brazil, and now the Global Alliance is now working jointly with the School Meals Coalition, jointly with the initiatives. So all the countries that would like to enhance their national school meals programs can work jointly with the coalition and with the Global Alliance. As Carmen mentioned, we will organize next month in September the School Meals Coalition in Fortaleza. It's one city in the northeast of Brazil. And we will organize this event, this meeting. It will be very important, the presence of Indonesia. That is one of the main countries that is now trying to increase the number of kids receiving school meals. So it's very important for us to have you there. And during this event, we will have also visits to schools in Brazil for you to know how the school meals programs happens there. So I would like to finalize inviting you, and I hope receive many of you in Fortaleza next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel Balaban and Mr. Daniel Bandoni. What's very interesting from the Brazilian government experience is that the program is under the law on education, and you already have the formula to calculate how the program contribute to the GDP, the national GDP, I assume, and also how you empower the family and traditional community to be part of the program, and maybe regarding to how we can then improve the program is you have the Center of Excellence, which also may be part of the research coalition supported by the School Meal Coalition. I would like to share that, as mentioned by the Vice Minister, that in the law on the long-term development plan to achieve in Golden Indonesia 2045, we have this objective for the vision. One is the human capital index. So the component, one of it is this stunting prevalence reduction. So that is one of the aim why Indonesia highlight the school meal program. And as also shared from Ibu Saskia, that it is very important to tackle the problem of malnutrition in countries. So large-scale food fortification is one of our priority. It's also include the assistance. The National Food Agency provide assistance with the rice, fortified rice to household, and also the biofortification in agriculture. So we have this very holistic approach in the planning document. So the challenge is how to implement the plan to action. So I think for the next session, the question and answer, I would give the first opportunity for the expert. Prof. Elan is here, and also Prof. Fasri Jalal, and also Pak Pungkas is also an expert. He's my guru, so I learned many things from him. So maybe Prof. Ella, Prof. Fasli or Pak Pungkas, who would like to be
Okay.
first? Prof. Fasli, please.
But thank you so much for a very comprehensive and inspiring speech. Yeah, now becoming more motivated to do. But our program is too big, too fast, too deep in penetration because we are covering finally 75,000 villages, reaching around 240,000 schools. So then that's why around 60 million, maybe above that number, will be achieved later on. My question is first, because at central level, we have many ministries. We have Ministry of Agriculture, we have Ministry of Health, we have Ministry of Education, and education also being guided by Ministry of Religious Affairs. So at least we have 4, ministries that related to this. You have special law for this, yeah, school feeding law, which is very remarkable. But what are the contents in this law? That's first question. Second, how you organize this many ministries? We have also a special body for nutrition, which is now responsible for delivering this. And we have also a special body for national food security. So at least 7 ministries plus other supporting. How we bring them together to own the program, because this is a big money, yeah. It's always zero-sum game for any big program. But because this is a very noble and our president is really keen to this is one of his promise. So we have the high level of commitment. We have funding security at least for the next 5 years. But then how can we really make better use of this opportunity? What steps do you have taken in Brazil when you start when you start at the beginning? How do you comprehend every step? And then what are lessons learned from gradually expand this program? My third question, maybe last question. We also promise to the people that this program will lead to the reducing stunting, because stunting is one of the big promise by the any government in Indonesia to the people, and we still have about 1 in 5 children in Indonesia are still stunted. But then school feeding is is not closely related to the stunting, but the president promised to have the pregnant woman full coverage and under 5 full coverage. But because of the way to reach the target, school is much more easier than the pregnant woman and then the under 5. Do you have this kind of experience? How do you combine this? One for better education outcome, but also health and nutrition, behavior, etc. But then also you would like to cater the special need for pregnant women and under 5 that can help us reducing the stunting. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Fasli. I think you can answer directly. It's not only 3 questions, I think, Prof.
Yeah.
Yeah, related to the cross-sectoral content in implementing the program, because in Indonesia we have line ministries that contribute to this program. And again, we need a large number of funding for the program. So how do you initiate this within the initial phase? And maybe regarding the risk to stunting, which is the number is quite big in Indonesia, even though we can reduce it gradually. And again, another beneficiaries is the pregnant woman and lactating women or breastfeeding mothers. So how do you cater? Do you put ask them to be part, or do you put them as part of the program? Thank you.
Okay, let's try. It's a very good questions. The first case of Brazil, I think you define the part of the budget that we use to finance your school feeding program. Use a specific part, it's a kind of social contribution So you use these parts to founding the Brazil National School Feeding Program. And you put in your budget that it's a obligation. So the government don't cut this. It's a budget. It's an obligation to spend the money. Okay? Yes. Mandatory, exactly. It's a mandatory part of the budget. Many times you see the governments that don't put more money, not correct the per capita values, but it's impossible to retire. I say that Brazilian population see the national school feeding program is a right. It's not more a government policy. It's a right. It's impossible for the government to say, oh, I finish this. It's extremely unpopular. So I think this is the first thing to work. And about these relationships, it's very important because the school feeding program is intersection programs between farmers, between agriculture, between health. And Brazil have the Minister of Social Development. All these ministries, all these people work with us. Is in our national fund that's responsible to manage the program. But you work with these ministries, you have many space to discuss and to work together your school feeding program. For example, the family farms was registered in a specific ministry. So we use this database to control exactly how much family farms the cities will buy, or not will buy, has buy. So you need to do this talk. It's not easy, but when you retire the budget of the table, okay, I know that the money from school feeding programs here, this is the place that you use. It's much easier, no, because you don't need to fight. Give me money, give me. It's easy for us. Let's talk about it. I think Daniel Balaban. It's a correct person to answer this, but Brazil has a long traditional in school feeding programs. Tomorrow I will show the timeline. So you start many years ago, but in my opinion, the modern school feeding program start when you decide to decentralize. For a country like Brazil with so different realities, so different cultural aspects, different economic realities, when you decide to transfer the money direct for the cities and the cities start to create the menus, to buy foods, to buy local foods, start the modern school feeding program. And again, Daniel here is one of the most important person in these histories in Brazil, in modern Brazil school feeding program. But you need to learn. It's not easy to reach this point. You need to train in the people. You need to talk in the city with the mayors, with the politicians, to hire nutritionists, to buy foods of the local produce. It's step by step. It's not so easy. About stunt, no. Again, I think school food policies is one of the key to fight against the stunting. I think another Brazil policy that's, for me, it's so important is the cash transfer. So in the 90s, Brazil started with the policies to cash transfer for poverty populations, and in the first Lula government increased it so much. And when you put money for the families and you gave the money for the mothers, this, and the mothers have this special way, and they buy foods. In general, they buy quality foods for the child, for the pregnant, for the families. And they buy foods again, these family farms, the local farms. So you start to increase the income of in these poorest places. It's together with Brazilian school feeding programs and another policies like your health system. You have a universal health system, free and universal health system, help us to reduce the stunting. But again, it's not so easy. It's a long time to reach the numbers, the good numbers about stunting. You have some difficulties until today in micronutrients. For example, in Brazil, you use fortified foods for population, like wheat flours, you fortify with iron, the salt with chlorine. So you have some foods, you need to use some fortified foods, but this food's not for school programs. It's sold in the supermarkets. All the white flour, for example, have iron in Brazil. So it's and I think another point of Brazil, it's you looking for the problems when you reduce it. Daniel said, oh, Brazil, it's now out of the hunger map, but every day you need to work for this. It's never stop. It's very easy to return. The problems returning, you see during the pandemic, the hunger increasing in Brazil very, very fast. So you need to government to decide to prioritize the food questions, to prioritize the health questions. It's a kind of day by day fight. So it's very easy to, the problem is with the return. It's more easy to return than that's to solve.
As Daniel said, in the beginning of this century, when Lula achieved the government, was elected, he decided to create a strategy called the Zero Hunger strategy. And this strategy has different actions. The main actions is Bolsa Família. Bolsa Família is the conditional income transfer where families receive funds just to maintain the kids in the schools. And also pregnant women receive funds, and they need, as conditionality, they need to go to the doctor every month to see the pregnancy. So just these measures decreased the number of child mortality and the pregnant mortality in Brazil. And school meals is one of these, the modern school meals, because school meal in Brazil was started in the 60s, but the modern school meals, as Daniel said, started in the beginning of this century when Brazil decided to decentralize the school meal program and to create a chamber called Kaizen. It's an interministerial chamber for food and nutrition security. So this chamber has almost 15 different ministries, and they discuss all these measures. So when they need to discuss the increase in school meals program, they need to discuss with the Minister of Planning, Minister of Finance, Minister of Social Development, Minister of Agriculture. Each one needs to understand what's going on, and they need to do their job. They need to do their part of the job. So that's why President Lula decided to organize the school meals. This is the most important. And this chamber has the leadership of Minister of Social Development. The school meals program in Brazil is led by the Minister of Education, but this chamber is led by the Minister of Social Development. So each minister can take the leadership of different actions, but all the ministers need to discuss the problems, the solutions, and everyone needs to understand what they need to do together. So if you don't do that, the program doesn't exist, doesn't work. We need different ministers looking for the same goals or the same objectives. And that's why I mentioned, and this is the government chamber. There's another, that's the Conselho. This is another chamber, but from civil society that discuss the problems in terms of food and nutrition security, not just school meals, but all the food and nutrition security in Brazil. Conselho is very important, but this is a council led by the civil society. But this is very important because President listens to the advices of this council in Brazil. So I don't know if we answer.
Why do you need the special law for school feeding, and what are the most important aspects?
Yes, we created, it was during my term, that the law for school feeding. It was very important because we have the private sector very instrumental in Brazil, and it was very difficult to approve this law in the Congress because a lot of interests, a lot of people discussing. Then this law defined the food that is forbidden to be served in schools. And before this law, it was served any kind of food in the schools, like hamburgers, pizzas, fat food, cookies, and Coca-Cola, a lot of things. It's not good. And our idea was to organize and to the kids understand the importance to have healthy meals. So when we started this, they started to receive healthy meals in Brazil. Brazil loves rice and beans and salad and vegetables and meat and chicken, eggs. This is the main school meals that now is served in Brazil. Of course, fish. During the week, they need to. And another thing that the law established, all the municipalities need to have nutritionists responsible for the menus. So the nutritionists, they understand the resolution from the federal level, and they need to establish with the food that is produced locally, the instrumentalize this food and organize the menus. So now, just for the school meals program, we have around 40,000 nutritionists working just for the school meals program. So it's a profession that nobody is, everybody is working. Nobody's out of work. So it's very interesting. So all the 5,567 municipalities need to have at least one nutritionist. All the states, 26 states and federal federal government, the federal district needs to have a nutritionist, but São Paulo has several nutritionists, Rio de Janeiro has several nutritionists because they are very, very, very large countries with a lot of with a large population. So we have 40,000 nutritionists working in school
And
meals.
the law also 30% of the food needs to come from family farming. That's
Yes.
also in the law.
Yeah, in the law, very she remembered the most important. At least 30% of the food needs to become directly from the smallholder farmers. Before the law, they use it to purchase the food in the supermarkets. So all the money, so you can imagine, it was around $2 billion just to purchase food, and these $2 billion went to just 2 or 3 or 4 providers of food. Now this money stays in the location, in the municipalities with the smallholder farmers. So it was important for the economic growth of the country.
Why only 70%?
Very, very good, because when we decided 30%, it was a number organized by the Ministry of Agrarian Development. So we have a minister in Brazil just for smallholder farmers, and they said the smallholder farmers, they are prepared to deliver 30%, at least one third. It was 33.3, so we decided 30%. But now Brazil is increasing. It's trying to increase for.
In this year, you sent for the Brazilian Congress to increase for 45%.
Yeah.
45%. Maybe starting the next year.
And maybe one more thing I want to highlight from the Brazilian program, because you mentioned the connection between the ministries. Because the law requires that at least 30% of the food come from family farmers, those family farmers need to be registered in the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Family Farming.
Yes.
So the Ministry of Education is responsible for the program, but the Ministry of Family Farming is responsible for supporting the farmers that then supply food to the schools. So the law actually mandates that the ministries work together, because one of them has to provide the food for the program.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel and Bu Carmen. I think we need to share, Prof, may I ask maybe 3 participants, then you can then add to answer the other question from the participant. So sorry, so we still have 20 minutes. I think tomorrow we will have another session, and I hope everyone here will then also join the workshop tomorrow. So I will give the chance to 3 persons, Prof. Elan, and then the second one from UNICEF, Ibu Irene, the third one from the National Nutrition Agency or the Presidential Secretariat. Would like to share your question? From the Presidential Secretariat. Okay, thank you very much. So Prof. Elan first, then maybe.
Well, first of all, again, I think for sharing the Brazil experience, but as well also the school meal programs from other countries, Europe and other part of the globe. So my question is, one is on the universal versus targeting. So in the case of Brazil, I think you've been very clear that the Brazil mandated that this program should be universal. Here too, actually in Indonesia. But I think also in the case of Brazil, I think we cannot just make this program nationwide at just like a month or 2. It should be like it takes time. But what I'd like to know is then what would be like the rule for the scaling up, from the beginning to the nationwide, where to start. And this is also the case perhaps for the country that implement the program as the targeting programs, which area should be targeted, which group, which student that actually should be targeted. I think, and this is related with the second question. So how Brazil as well, perhaps also in other countries, So who's actually preparing and delivering the food on the ground? In our country, the government decided, at least until now, that in each area they established like what we call as a public kitchen that will serve like around 3,000 to 3,500, and then preparing all the food at one place and then delivering that actually to this 3,000 3,500 students. I think of course the advantage is like this is like perhaps they can implement like a single standard, perhaps more efficient, but at the same time, the Indonesian geography is very heterogeneous. 3,500 3,000 or 3,500 in Jakarta is perhaps like in a relatively small area, but outside Java, 3,000 3,500 students, it's a very vast area. Some of this public kitchen actually they're very struggling to delivering the food and not really able actually to deliver it on time because the vast area that they need to serve. Also, the other potential issue is if there is like a contamination, so that in that one of the public kitchen, and we actually impose the risk to this 3,500 students. I'm not sure, but if as I understand, in the case of Brazil, I think that food preparation and food distribution, that's actually at the community at the school level, right? So I'm not sure how many students actually in the school and then this community actually will serve, but I think if you can compare the experience Brazil and other countries, including Indonesia, I think that will be great. Yeah, I think this is also the one proposal that National Nutrition Agency actually now considering, because the request from the president to expand, and it's not easy actually for the foundation for the private sector actually to respond to the president call to accelerate the program, because it's relatively costly actually to establish, to build this public kitchen that will serve, that will be able actually to serve the 3,000 3,500 students. The third one is on you mentioned that school meal program, it should go beyond feeding student. So it should be like also on the nutritional knowledge, dietary behavior, good dietary behavior, things like that. So what would be the element of the program itself that would meet actually that objective other than just feeding the students? Do you have, other than nutrition, do you have like a facilitator that would, delivering, the campaign, the education material, things like that? Yeah. I think that's my question.
Thank you, Prof. Alan. Then I will over to Ibu Irene for the question, please.
Yeah, so thank you for the sharing experience from Brazil. And Saskia, it's nice to meet you. I was joining CMEO in the beginning of 2000, so was exposed to your work at the end of 90s with Prof. Muhila, the late Prof. Muhila. So my first question is about fortified rice, but I know we're going to have a discussion as well tomorrow on that one. And for the rice fortification, the country has started, but of course in smaller scale, and UNICEF actually with the Ministry of Health has started to do a bit of pilot in East Java province. We included rice fortification for food supplementation for pregnant women, and it is actually well accepted. Of course, the problem becoming the supplies, because it's not yet, we don't have many a producer of fortified rice at the moment, and because they don't want to fortify the rice because they don't see the market. And then of course that also increased the price, and it might be an issue when it is being included in a large program, because then probably the costs become unaffordable. But of course, that's also a way of doing that. When it is mandatory, then the more market, the bigger the market, the lower the price gonna be. So I think that's some of the strategy that we can perhaps discuss more tomorrow, but would like also to hear your insight briefly today. And then the second one is Brazil experience. So thank you so much. I think it's good to learn from the country who has started a few years ahead. And thank you for sharing about the law. I think that's one of my question as well, because now there has been quite a viral news about the program in the country actually distributing UPF food high in sugar, salt, and fat. Yeah, and because of the holidays, they think that they can only provide packaged food. But then the same principle then gonna apply when we talk about the remote areas, because then people were thinking that they cannot actually prepare pre-cooked food, and they would like to prepare this UPF food, which is of course no longer healthy. It doesn't serve the intention of the program, the vision of the program right from the beginning. So I think I would like also to hear about, because I know that the law is very important, I guess, here to regulate that and also to control the conflict of interest from many sectors. But I think also it's important to understand how this is being, how the process of going into there, of course, going to be a lot of advocacy, but also like how to balance the need, for instance, for the remote areas, for instance, during the, we have the holy month of Ramadan as well, which is probably not possible to provide cooked meals, yeah, but also how to deal with the remote areas, because I know you mentioned as well that Brazil also have several remote areas. And school meal is one thing because it's institutionalized. We deliver the meals to the schools where there is a certain places for that. But the program in Indonesia also include under 5 and pregnant women and lactating women, when the government actually, the kitchen, the public kitchen will have to deliver the foods to the community. And there is no certain kind of, at the moment, we are working, actually we are supporting also the government to find that, to develop the protocol, how they can actually reach the pregnant woman and under 5. But talking also about the remote areas in the country, when we have to reach the school and the pregnant woman and under 5. So what's going to be the option and what were the experience from Brazil for that? I think that would be very interesting to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Irene. And then the last chance for.
Oke, terima kasih. Hello, good afternoon all. My name is Irham. I'm an advisor at the Executive Office of the President. Thank you for your sharing about the Brazil school meals program. From what I understand, that there are 2 ways of oversight in the PNAE. One is via the government chambers, and the second one with the via the civil society chambers. Are they working together by produce one single report, or are they working separately by producing shadow report from the civil society? I mean, that's one of the best practice that maybe we could copy in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Irene, for Pelan and Mas Irham. I think because Prof. Bundi already would like to share your experience, maybe the first explanation from Prof. Budi and then from Ibu Saskia, and after that, I think the most important information is from the Brazil government. So I would give the floor to Prof. Budi first, please.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, I want to, I share your amazement at the detail from the Brazilian government. I mean, it's one of the most amazing programs where if you actually go and see how it's run. It's the second largest program in the world, but it also has a very strong database. That's one of its key strengths. I hope that's a strength that you will also think about in taking your program forward. But I'm also going to just make a different case, and I know both Daniels would agree with me on this, which is there's a lot to be learned from other programs too. that this is certainly what's going on in Brazil is crucial. And at this moment, having these two real experts in the room, it's vitally important. But I also want to say, so for example, when we asked the question, you asked the question about organizing multiple ministries. Different countries have taken different solutions to that. So we can think of some countries where the school meals program is situated in the president's office, because that gives a cross-ministerial options. We can think of countries where a sort of Bapanas approach has been adopted, where the planning ministry is responsible. And we can also think of countries where different lead ministries are in charge, very different. So in the US, the USDA is in charge of their program. But there are different countries where education is perhaps the most popular, but social protection is the second most popular lead ministry, with them also having then interministerial committees to achieve that. I'm just raising it to say it's worthwhile listening to other countries too about their practices. And that's exactly what the Research Consortium tries to do, not just pulling government specialists together, but specialists, just like we have here with Brazil, people who are actually working as you do, as academics and practitioners in those areas. And I want to extend that same point about thinking across countries to your questions about laws, because certainly there are some countries that have gone the route of using specific laws as the key rule, and it clearly works. But it's different for some countries. They've made different choices. Very famously, you'll know that India's focus on a universal school meals program came about because the society took the government to court. It's the Supreme Court of India who decreed that any child required to stay in school for a day also should be entitled to a full meal. And these are, so there are other countries where they use decrees, others where they use acts of parliament. There's a range of approaches, even court injunctions. So there's a range of approaches. So I would advise that it would be worth thinking about talking to some of these other options as to how they work in practice. And that leads me to the very specific question. Sorry, can I also say Islamic countries too have particular ways they're approaching this? And there was mention about what happens during Ramadan. What are the approach? So again, there's a value in getting that broader approach. But I wanted to come to the question of universal versus targeting, which was raised. And I think that one of the most useful concepts to help us understand this is the concept of so-called proportionate universality. So this is a proportionate universality that came from Michael Marmot, the person whose group was most involved in this, in the issue of the social determinants of health. And this is the idea of a gradient of need. So for the classic example people talk about in this is Japan. So Japan has had a universal school meals program since the Second World War. It's been a continuous and effective program, but it's never been free. It's not a free program. It's an obligation. If you send a child to school, you have to pay for the child to be fed. And they then have various processes, progressive to a more or less degree, of grants and so forth to subsidize some of the children. Why does it work? Because of course the degree of need is different across the wealth quintiles. So the degree of need is greatest for the poorest children and least for the children from the most well-off families. And that's why targeted programs work, because they target the poorest. And so the question of how do you move from doing that to the universal program is, it all depends on the gradient of need. So it may be in some parts of Indonesia, you'd need to move more quickly, or you would have to have more universality, a stronger element of universality than in other parts. So again, my point is there are good examples out there of where this has been applied, and those would be worth, I think, giving some thought to. And finally, I wanted to just briefly mention on the stunting question, because the question we need to ask ourselves is, what does the school meals program bring that we didn't have before to the stunting question? So you were targeting stunting before with programs directed at the first 1,000 days. You were also, I think, probably targeting poverty in thinking about that. So what is it that's different now with your new program? Well, there's, I think, three things. One is you're targeting adolescent girls as part of the program, right? So the nutrition and health of young girls as they grow up, before they become mothers, is one of the things you're directing this program at. And there's, I don't have to explain this, there's abundant evidence of why that's important in terms of stunting. The second would be the very greatly increased evidence for catch-up growth at the school years, something that has been, I think, rather disregarded. The focus on the first 1,000 days disregarded the fact that children can catch up on stunting. And then the third one, and this relates to another question that was raised, is about the changing attitude to food that your program can achieve. It changes the people's understanding of their relationship with food and their understanding of food. Food has never been more socially discussed than it is today. It's a huge topic of conversation. But what people talk about food is often very mythological, as many of us around this table are well aware. So changing the relationship, changing parents, changing what children understand about food, changing what they take home to their parents about food, is also something that will change the way we think about how we should feed our children. So those are all benefits that come out of the program that I think are worth thinking of.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Ibu Saskia, and then Mr. Daniel and Ibu Carmen, you would like to add, but this we have to finish at 5:12, so short explanation, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I really want to emphasize that we're layering interventions, right? Now with the free nutritious meal program that comes on top of other efforts and achievements already. I mean, hard work has been done in Indonesia, and the 1,000 days focus should remain, and this comes on top and adds to that. And for the fortified foods, and especially the fortified rice, that's really a population level intervention. And that should really target, if there's targeting, it should be to those with the lower micronutrient intake. And for pregnant women, breastfeeding women, there are also supplements that need to be added to what they're getting from their food, even if that includes fortified food. And we can talk more about food fortification tomorrow. Thank you.
Bu Saskia. Then I offer to Pak Daniel, please.
Let's try. It's very good questions. I think you need a long time to answer. About targeting programs, I will speak a little more tomorrow. Tomorrow I will start my presentation, defense free and universal school meals programs. But it's normal when you start the program, you start in the big cities because you have a large population displaced, most of the schools and the students. So I think it's a very good way to start the program, to reach this place that you have the most of the population. Looking for the models, the problems, and expand for all the countries. So I imagine that it's a good way to begin. In Brazil, you have different models. You don't have, and Daniel said, around the world, the countries use different models and this work very well. So never talk that Brazil is the best because don't exist the best way. Exists the way that works and reach the goals of this program. So I think the most important point is define the goals, define the target or universal or for only kindergartens or for elementary schools or Brazil do for everybody, every schools. So when you define the goals, you define the population, now looking for the models, look for the local realities and try to develop the best way for this country, for Indonesia or in other countries. And then you'll have a large experience and see many models and the different model work so beautiful too and so different that you use in Brazil. But for example, in Brazil, have these school kitchens for far areas, remote areas. It's work very well for us because the community produce the foods like many indigenous schools. The foods are produced for indigenous communities. They plant the foods, they sold for the schools. In general, these small schools with small number of students. So it's the easiest way to do. Daniel said about the river, you need to travel 3-4 days in a boat. And many times the river in a part of the year was dry. So how to deliver foods when the river, now you can use the river. So develop solutions for these specific situations. And the best way to find solutions is listen the people, listen the local peoples, listen the teachers, listen the families, because they know the problems and they know, in general, they know how to solve the problems. So in Brazil, in general, you have school kitchens, but you have the central kitchens too. And this work very well because it's very structured kitchens. They transport the foods with control of temperature and deliver the foods at schools. So again, local solutions is the best way to solve. But in general, you can develop it a way that's for the most of schools and work well. And these specific situations, ask for the community, talk with the people, go to this place, and develop the way that we work. About the food and nutrition education, this is a very important point for us. I work some things that you learn that work in Brazil, like school gardens, cooking classes, but the main point for me is work with the professors. Professors know what the children eat outside schools. Professors, the teachers, yes. É professor, né? Que coisa, mania de professor universitário. The teachers know what the children eat outside schools. The teachers live in this community in the most of the case. And the teacher is a stakeholder to learning about food and nutrition. You need to teaching the teachers the information, and nutritionists help with this, but put food and nutrition in the math classes, in the language classes, in the history classes. This is a very important point to create, like Professor said, another relationships with the foods, another see your culture, this community story about the foods. I think it's very, very important and work very well in Brazil. And about the monitoring the in Brazil use a different way. The first is technological solutions. So all the cities need to put the values and the foods that they buy. So they put food is how much they pay, the quantity they buy, and you look for this in electronic systems and in monitoring if this food is from family farms or no, and you keep monitoring this big information and visit the cities, visit the it's impossible in a large country only use electronicals or website information. You need to go to see exactly, okay, they buy a lot of foods, but in the menus, how this food was transformations in dishes. So it's very important to visit the school, visit the places, is another way to monitor. But again, it's not an easy way because Brazil is so big, and in general, you visit when you see problems. When the social control, the school, this council, the council, the city council, appointed the problems, and you try to go to visit and understand how to solve the problems.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Daniel. So the last response from Ibu Carmen, please.
Well, thank you so much for this very rich conversation, and maybe from the questions that you've asked, it's quite clear, of course, some of the concerns that you have and some of the challenges that you're facing in the scale up of the program, and the enormous responsibility, of course, that the enormous ambition and vision of the president and what you're trying to do. So maybe what I want to offer, perhaps as a closing, is just some reflections of what we see from different countries and some of the studies that we've done, offering that to you as a bit of lessons learned. So, I mean, one of the things that I think you've heard from some of us today is, and particularly the Brazilian experience, but we see this in many countries, it takes about 10 years in the countries that we've seen, that we've studied, for the programs to reach maturity of any level. So one of the things that I think we're inviting you to think about is, this is, we believe, a long road that Indonesia has to travel, and not everything's going to be reached overnight. I know that that's difficult in terms of the politics of the situation, but really think about what needs to be done now. But there are different layers of maturity of the program. In most of Latin America, for example, we see countries that are in the third or the fourth reform of the program. These are programs that have gone through 40, 50 years of iterations. So the perfectionism of the program really happens over decades. And this is really something that I think we're all inviting you to think about, is that progressive increment of the program. A few things that I just wanted to bring in terms of lessons from other countries. It is very tempting to give the responsibility to one entity in the government or one ministry to just get it done. So in many countries, what we've seen is the Ministry of Education, as Don was saying, or the Ministry of Social Protection, or one of the ministries is always in charge of implementing the program. And there is the temptation to say, here's the money, go get it done. The problem with that model is that if you leave that ministry alone, and in this case, for example, it's NNA or the different elements of the here, how it's being implemented, then you lose the participation and the connection with the other sectors. You lose the conversation with agriculture, you lose the conversation with health, you exclude education in many cases from what needs to be a multi-sector, multi-ministerial level conversation. And I think from what we've seen in other countries, that is clearly the role of a coordinating ministry or of a presidency or from the top. It needs to be accompanied by a multi-sectoral conversation, like the solutions that you've heard here from Brazil and others. So that's one, I think, exhortation from us is think now about what are the ministries that need to be around the table, and start now with that multi-sectoral approach. Don't just give the burden and the responsibility to one entity in the government. The second thing is, because of the speed in many countries of scale up, there is the temptation to think about one model across the country, cookie cutter approach, let's just do this. In most of the successful programs that we've seen, there is no such thing as one size fits all model. In most of the countries, and particularly large countries and diverse countries like Indonesia, as you heard from Brazil, but this applies across the board, there are many different models in the same country. So you need to think about centralized kitchens, for example, in urban areas or large population centers, but that's not going to be very easily solutions that you're going to be able to apply in very remote areas like you heard today. So the element of thinking about different models applied to the context is going to be very important in your scale up, as we've seen from other countries. Third, we've talked a little bit about this today, and we see that that is part of your concerns. The food safety and making sure that the children are getting food that is safe to eat, that there are elements that are controlling that food safety is a really important topic, one that you need to think about very, very carefully. The temptation in some countries has been that to not have food safety problems, then it's about prepackaged, ultra-processed food to schools. And the private sector as a main actor there. So you just kind of wash your hands and say, okay, we're just going to give cookies and prepackaged milk, chocolate milk to schools or whatever, because that way we forget about the food safety concerns. A warning there, because many countries that have gone that way are now reforming their programs because they're realizing that was a mistake. Because now children are actually suffering from the other side, which is obesity, overweight, over kilocalories, sugary drinks, etc. So not saying that that's going to be easy, because food safety is a concern when you're talking about fresh produce, local farming, etc. But going the other route in many countries has not been the most successful solution. So you might want to think about that. There is obviously a concern and a lot of advocacy and a big conversation in many countries around this issue of what are children getting. The definition of what a healthy menu is going to be key, I think, in the case of Indonesia, but as we've seen in other countries. And one of the elements that we're seeing in Latin America, for example, is regulation, not just of the food that children consume in school, but the food environments around the school, marketing to children, canteens and private sector vendors that are in school or around the schools. Are they allowed? Are they not allowed? These elements of regulation of food environments in schools is a really important topic, but it's one that's hotly contested in many countries, and just preparing you a little bit for that conversation. And I have two more. The other one is the connection, and some of you have brought this up, the meals is just one element of what should be a broader school health and nutrition approach in schools. And in some cases, in the case of Indonesia, we see this, because there's an agency that is delivering and implementing the program. Don't forget about the importance of anchoring this in the broader education sector. You heard it from Brazil, but I think we have it from other countries. The teachers are key to this, school administrators, the whole education system needs to be brought in, because they are the anchor sector where this is being implemented. So it's really important to have the Ministry of Education at the table. Connecting that to curriculum reform, nutrition, education, broader water and sanitation issues and other things is going to be important. Maybe not immediately, but really thinking about this as a holistic package of support to schools is going to be very important. Finally, very, very important as well, in most countries we've seen over the years, the need to balance the role of the private sector with the role of the public sector. Countries that are implementing programs that are outsourced to the private sector. So private sector companies that are tasked with setting up the kitchens, cooking the food, providing the food to the schools. It seems very convenient in the first instance, but what we've seen from governments is that the public sector has a really important role to play that cannot be devolved to the private sector. The public sector has a responsibility to regulate the program, to provide policies in place, to have accountability mechanisms, etc. So even if you are having healthy partnerships with the private sector, the government really has a responsibility ultimately to implement the program. And finally, many of you have talked about monitoring, have talked about social, like the accountability element. The case of Brazil is illustrative, but we learned from other countries that civil society, the role of local communities is crucial in the accountability mechanisms of the programs. The communities are the ones that have the most to gain and the most to lose if the programs are not implemented correctly, but they are the ones that can alert you if things are not happening. So in the Chinese case, for example, Don and I have supported China for many, many years. One of the things that we saw when we visited the program for the first time was that the parents and the community was not being told what are the children entitled to? What are the menus? What are they supposed to be getting? And so in one of our visits, we recommended to China that in the schools, the menus be printed and be put in every school so that the parents know what are they supposed to be getting. Because immediately after that, they will tell you if the children did not get that day or that week, if they're not getting the food they're supposed to be getting. You need to empower those local communities in the form of committees or councils or whatever, so that they are your eyes and ears on the ground to make sure that the children are getting what they need to be getting. So there's a really important role to play for communities, for parents that we're also advising that you keep in mind.
Thank you very much, Bu Carmen. A very inspiring and a very, very important message. So before we end this session, I think I would like to give the chance.
What do you think the guideline for us in preparing the research agenda at baseline level, gradual monitoring and evaluation, and then learning process? What do you suggest us?
I think you probably know the answer to this question, but I think it's what's very important is that if we're going to think about this program having many different outcomes, those outcomes all need to be part of those assessments. Otherwise, we do a baseline now, which is only about nutrition, which is the easy thing to do. Well, it's not that easy, but we do, that simple thing. And then next year we say, yeah, but we wanted to know whether this program also changed the way people thought about food. And we didn't ask any questions, so we don't know whether it's changed. So my point would be more to think holistically about what are the outcomes, what are the crucial outcomes. There isn't just one, as you well know, and do several of those at different points as you're moving forward. And of course, as you do that, you will learn what to do differently next time. I mean, that's in all of our research and science. That's really how we learn. We try things and then learn from that experience.
Thank you, Robandi. So before the MC close this session, I would like to give the chance to Pak Pungkas to share important message. Pak Pungkas, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for all the discussion. I think it's very rich and our questions actually justified. We have all of these questions, and so we need to listen more, to learn more, and probably do some sensitivity of what we are doing. So I would like to just a brief a spoiler to my presentation tomorrow, because this is giving a context of what we program are. Bisa dipresentasikan nggak? Yeah. So just to clarify that our programs is not only for school. So it started from pregnant mothers, lactating mothers, children under 5 up to children 18 years of age. So basically the theory. So it's not only catering the school. That's why the program is not school meal program. It was like school meal programs during the campaigns, but and then we transitioned into free nutritious meal program. I think this make a difference in some of the discussion that we have. So basically, this is the question that been answered by Prof. Bandi, that stunting is integral part of it, because the interventions for stunting, the first 1,000 days of life, is part of these programs. So it's not a school meal program. That's why the age range is quite wide. And then these universals, we we don't, up to now, we don't have mean testing, so everyone can get it. But in the field, if you are coming from the rich school, you opt to opt out from the programs. And then the funding is 100% from the governments, central governments. We centralize because we have an experience on how decentralized works, and that also raises the questions: how can we make the best use of the local governments and community in this setting? So I think this will be also quite discussion tomorrow. We already note that the School Meal Coalition have some research coalition, consortiums, yeah, research consortium. This is good news for us. I think we would like to engage more with the research consortium, especially on the analysis, monitoring, and evaluations. This year we have like more than 18 analysis and studies specific for school meal for pre-nutrition meal programs. Terus yang jumlah kajian. And we have also 3 big surveys. This is the analysis that we have, and we are starting to conduct it this month up to the end of this year. So a lot of questions we would like to answer through this analysis and studies. And we have comments 3 surveys already, 2 by Central Bureau of Statistics and 1 by the BGN itself. A survey on nutrition as well as all the impacts that we would like to measure. And if you can go back to my first slide, so because we intend the programs to, the objective of the program is to improve the nutrition, education, ya terus ke atas, sorry for this mess, paling atas yang ini tujuan program. Nutrition, education, education, economy, and poverty. So basically, we developed the framework for monitoring evaluations to capture all these impacts. And this is what we are doing now, the survey. The questions from Pak Ellen previously on the side is how we design the evaluation impact, which is quite difficult because the program is there. And of course, there are some methodology and we are working on it. But this is really, we are really have to run because the presidents, the program is accelerated. In our medium-term plan, the universal coverage for 92 million will be reached by 2029. But the president wants this year. And probably it won't be this year, but at least next year. The funding is already there. So this is why we have to run fast. We have to safeguard all the program. And I think we get a lot of inputs from all of you. And tomorrow will be very lively discussions because of this pressure that we have. Certification basically is part of our objective as well. And we don't know how to integrate the programs. There are some options, but we really need to know the example from other countries, how fortification is part of the program as well. And on the regulations, because if we think that the program is beneficial for reaching the golden 245, so we have to safeguard the program at least. It can be stopped by 5 years. So that's why we're thinking about the regulations, Pak Pasri, how do we maintain the programs? I think most of the, I've been dealing with the program for stunting and then this program as well. I think most of the program that I heard there is no opposition from expert, from academician is school meal these programs. Other programs have a lot of controversies, but this one is quite supportive because we see the nutrition meal program as the vehicle, not only for the nutrition, but health, education, economy, poverty. Then the questions for us is how we convince everybody that the program has an impact. So in that, we need the monitoring and evaluation. But to maintain the impact, I think we cannot just maintain this program 1 year or 5 years. We have to need this program to run the longer terms. And in that case, we need some regulations that can maintain that program. In addition to the benefit that has been, felt by the community, but the regulation is there. So those are the the challenge that I hope tomorrow we will have some enlightenments from all of you, and some of us also will present the Indonesian versions. So this is will in the part of the early presentation tomorrow to give a highlight of what our program is. So with that, I would like to thanks again. I don't want to close this session because I still want to discuss this tomorrow. And I will take it to Ibu Renggo, and thank you so much for all the discussions.
Yes, thank you very much, Pak Pungkas, because my role as the moderator is finalized now. Thank you very much again, Pak.
Sorry, just one more. COA, we have a COA here as well, so we have get in touch with COA as well. So Secretariat, of course, we in Indonesia we didn't have the secretariat for the school meal coalitions part here, but I think the COA can be part of it, and COA also part of our initiative. So we're working through COA, and we are keen also to come to Brazil this September, hopefully, get a lot of experience from there. Thank you.
Thank you again, Pak Pungkas. Yeah, yes. Yes. Again, thank you very much for Ibu Jennifer, Ibu Carmen, Ibu Saskia, Bapak Prof. Bundi, and then Bapak Daniel and Balban. I cannot. I don't. Balaban. Okay, Bapak Daniel Balaban. We call Bapak in Indonesia, and Bapak Daniel Bandoni. We are expecting you will share again tomorrow. And other participants, my apology, the time is very limited, so I'm expecting all participants today will be joining the seminar tomorrow. And again, I will then give the next part for closing remark. And MC, please, I offer to you to close and provide the remark to Pak Fasli. Thank you.
Terima kasih Ibu Lenggo telah memandu diskusi hari ini. Selanjutnya kami mengundang Profesor Fasli Jalal untuk menutup diskusi dan juga memberikan closing remarks untuk hari ini. Untuk Profesor Fasli Jalal kami persilakan.
Thank you, Bu Cameron, and also Bu Jennifer, Professor Wandi, Bu Saskia, and also Dr. Balaban and Dr. Badani. It is very inspiring to all of us to listen to your presentation very comprehensively, and we learn a lot, and it's create a kind of the worry among us, As I mentioned before, our program is too big, too fast, too complex, and too deep in penetration. You mentioned it takes 10 years to be mature, like this program. But our president is very enthusiastic with this, and we have to serve him to make sure that the willingness is never before. The one leader in Indonesia really willing to put money from all over the place and giving to the community, benefit the farmer, benefit the children, benefit the parents, benefit the ecosystem in the rural area. So for us, we will learn from, from Brazil and also from other countries like Professor Bandi mentioned. We need a wider perspective to be learned from. But please guide us, along the way, because you have compiled the many best practices and lessons learned. Feel free to give us that guideline, because this movement will also be discussed by high-ranking level, by president himself, by cabinet member. So the better the information we got, the better debate among the high level, the better implementation will be happening. So thank you again, and we will meet again many more time. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Profesor Fasli Jalal atas penutupannya. Sebelum saya menutup kegiatan hari ini, ada beberapa pengumuman. Untuk tamu VIP, makanan sudah disediakan di ruang tunggu eksekutif di samping pintu utama. Dan untuk peserta lainnya, makan siang juga sudah disediakan di lewat pintu belakang di pintu belakang sana. Ya. Lalu bagi peserta yang belum mengisi daftar hadir, mohon untuk mengisi daftar hadir di resepsionis, di meja registrasi di depan. Baik. Dengan demikian, berakhirlah kegiatan Forum Internasional bersama Pakar School Meals Coalition hari ini. Kami mengucapkan terima kasih atas perhatian dan partisipasi aktif Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Semoga hasil diskusi hari ini dapat memberikan kontribusi nyata bagi keberlanjutan program makan bergizi gratis di Indonesia. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang dan sampai jumpa.
There are several countries in the coalition, including Brazil. So I wanted to, I think in 2 years from now, lessons learned. So the idea is that Brazil essentially, that's what happened in Paris. In Paris, Brazil said, and Brazil, and then Brazil said, we will be hosting. So ideally, that would also happen this. Let us know. The offer is coming from the Secretariat, but the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also essentially asked me to extend that from Brazil to Indonesia. There was, I understand, President Prabowo was in Brazil recently with President Lula, and President Lula will come here in October. So it's a really also interesting bilateral turning of the baton and saying Brazil does the summit now and then gives that to Indonesia to the host of next one. So politically, I think it makes sense, but also for you, I think it would be an opportunity
We'll do our best.
And then you count on us. Very nice. Thank There's a number of partners.